fact, I started passed my test and straight away just loved cars. I was part of that max power generation where everyone got max power and fast car and all the car magazines, and it was back in the day when you'd go and buy an Escort, put the 90 kit, RS Turbo kit on them, and just start playing around with cars. It's changed a lot now. That kind of thing doesn't seem to happen anymore. There isn't that massive passion that there was back in the 80s and 90s when everyone was just mad about cars. So that's when I kind of grew up and got into the whole Ford scene originally. So I'm not always in the office. I'm probably only in here 2 days a week normally, but we moved in here. We spent 10 years in a really small office, and we've only just moved in here 6 months ago, and it's a chance for us to have this really cool modern office. And I think the main thing is we've got the posters, all the the movies that we're really proud of to have worked on as well. So car-wise, it's sort of it progressed. I started off with an Orion, and then it went up to I had a Series 1 RS Turbo, Series 2 RS Turbo, then a Sierra Cosworth came along, and then a couple of Escort Cosworths, and then I got into my rallying, and then I started going to a few Japanese things, and then ended up with a Nissan GTR, and then ended up with the car I've always wanted now, which was my Ferrari. I was just I was in the forces, but I was still mad about cars, and obviously in the army you don't have a massive amount of money, but I just put everything I could get into buying a Sierra Cosworth. So I was 21 years old, driving a 3-door Cosworth, 400 horsepower. In those days you can insure things like that. Things are quite different now with the insurance, but yeah, had that. And I always remember leaving the army the day I left, did a massive donut on the parade square before driving out of camp, and that was my kind of like see you later to the army. But it was a great time, it was all good and had a lot of fun. So when I left the forces, I didn't have much to do. I had no exams, no qualifications. I'd left school and gone straight into that. So the fire brigade always excited me, and joined the fire brigade and loved it. Got into the ambulance and medical side of stuff as well. And then through my love of cars, I got involved with the RTA rescue side of things. So I started off originally as an RTA rescue instructor, and then I was then like assessing fire brigade crews, and I was teaching the brigade how to deal with an RTA, how to cut a car apart, how to manage an emergency scene on the motorway, for example, multiple cars. And I became an RTA rescue instructor for the fire brigade, and it was great because it's what I understood. I understood cars, I understood how they're put together, and then using that I understand how they can be ripped apart in a crash. So at that stage the rallying was costing me so much, and I wanted to find this way of being involved in the motorsport still. So I combined what I did in the fire brigade with motorsport, and I set up a Motorsport Association rally rescue unit. And from that I was still involved in the motorsport, but it was more from a safety side. So we were covering rallies and sprints. We'd go to race circuits, we'd be at Thruxton and Donington and Brands Hatch doing all of the race circuit cover. We'd be up in the mountains of Wales doing rallies in Wales, and then we started getting involved with other things as well. The guys that I was working with, they decided to sell the company. The guy that owned it moved out to Dubai, and I just saw this opening, and I said to him I'd like to carry it on if possible. And we did, and we started, initially we were covering the track activities at Dunsfold where they filmed Top Gear. And then through that I started to develop this relationship with the Top Gear team, and I could sort of see in my head that there was this opportunity to combine the experience and the understanding that I had with cars, and almost like this little business light bulb turned on in my head, and it all kind of began from there. And I was doing all the Top Gear track stuff, and yeah, it just kind of progressed. And then the Top Gear stunt with the Bugatti Veyron versus the Eurofighter, the big iconic film, came along, and I just said to the production team, you know what, can I coordinate all of the safety for it? And they said yes. So I spoke to the RAF Fire Brigade, spoke to the ambulance company that was based at the airfield where we were doing it, and I just kind of coordinated what we would do if anything had gone wrong. And it was a great opportunity for me to push my passion in running that sort of thing. And then from that, Top Gear got us involved in a lot more stuff. We were then working more around the UK. We then started to work for the show, doing stuff in Europe, and it just put us up that next level to work with it. Back then the show wasn't as huge as it is now, but it was just great being involved in it from so early on. We've been with it for 11 years now, and there's just a great relationship between the production team and my team, and it's just been great. We've done some of the really good films. I think one of the best ones for me was the car chase in the shopping centre with the Corvette chasing the Fiesta. That was great. We did the tunnel stunt out in Belfast where we flipped, I think it was a Renault Twingo inside a tunnel. And these are quite difficult things for me and what I do to be done. You know, you imagine you trying to get an emergency services crew into a tunnel. How do you do that? And that was all part of the magic of what we could do. We could develop something bespoke to enable these things to be done safely. And throughout the office, there's all sorts of just strange things from, you know, various things we've done around the world. The number plates, for example, they're number plates from all sorts of, you know, one-off films that we've done, I think. So we've got a lot of the vehicles we keep at all sorts of places. We always keep one vehicle at Dunsfold Circuit for the filming that we do there. But a lot of the vehicles at the office today, so we have just normal ambulances. This ambulance, for example, is quite a good one. So this goes on all 12 rounds of the British Touring Car Championships. So one of the guys that works for me, he takes that to every single round of VTCC. So that goes around all over the place. So it was late 2011 and we've been doing all the bits and bobs for a while. I was still in the fire brigade, so I was doing me 2 days, 2 nights fire brigade shifts. I might have done some ambulance work as well. And then these rumours started coming around about this film coming to the UK about Formula One, and Ron Howard was going to direct it. And back then we didn't have a name for it or anything. And we made a few phone calls, spoke to a few guys that I knew, a lot of contacts through Top Gear as well. And we learnt this film called Rush was going to come out about Formula One cars. And there was quite a lot of excitement around it. And ended up speaking to a few people, and suddenly, boom, we're there on this big feature film with Ron Howard. You know, the guy's Richie from Happy Days, and it was just legendary to work on something like that. So I'd been used to working on just normal TV shows, and Top Gear, the way it works is very informal within the team, and it's quite a small, tight team. And now suddenly I was immersed into this world of big US feature films, massive budgets, 300-400 extras on set, and it was a whole new experience for us. Doing what we did was the same, but it's just the scale of it and the size of the set and the amount of cameras, and it was just wonderful to be part of. So working with Ron Howard was just amazing. The guy has just got this passion for storytelling. He doesn't call himself a director, he calls himself a storyteller. And it was just so, working on a film set can be quite tough and loud and shouty, but this guy just put the whole set at ease. He's just the nicest man. And you'll see people walk past him and you'll call him over and you think, what's he doing? Ron, you know, the director's called this person over. He gets his camera out and he's like, hey, let's get a selfie for Twitter. You know, the guy just put everyone at ease. Such a lovely man who could just make working on a film set so enjoyable. And because it was a film set, the great thing with Rush was to get permission to use the location we used for the pit lanes, this massive pit lanes that we built, and we could change them into different countries every day. Part of the permission from the local council was that they had to be accessible to the public still, because it was in a massive public common area. So every day on a film set, in the crowds, you'd have people coming in, walking their dogs, and Formula One fans, people from all over the world would come in and sit in the crowd as, you know, extras in the crowd and get to watch this amazing movie with these Formula One cars in being filmed. It was just great to be part of. We wrapped on Rush around the start of 2012, and it was a time when things were happening, bigger things were on the horizon. I was still in the fire brigade, still doing my shifts, and I just thought there's an opportunity here to progress to something. And then that's then when this massive opportunity occurred. There was a few big films coming up that were quite exciting me, and I thought it'd be great to go from Rush to something like that. And I've always wanted to work on a big movie franchise, whether it's Bond or Bourne or something like that. But for me, cars was always massively important. I love my cars. And then rumours started coming around again, similar in a way to what Rush did. That's how the film industry works. That Fast and Furious was coming to the UK, to be based in the UK for Fast 6. And I just thought, wow, this is better than any Bond film. This is Fast and Furious. It doesn't get much bigger. You know, I've spent my last 10 years watching these movies, having RS turbos and Nissan Skylines and all this sort of stuff. And the franchise was coming. There was a production office set up, and I was pinging a few emails, and I couldn't really get to where I wanted to get. I couldn't really get that meeting. And then a friend of mine who was a stunt coordinator, I'd worked with him a lot on Top Gear, a guy called Jim Dowdall. He's like my film industry dad, who I respect massively. And I said to Jim about it, and Jim is quite high up in the UK stunt industry. Jim just said to me, Andy, I'm going to make a few calls, let me give you a ring back. And then he phoned me back 5 minutes later and said, right, can you be at Shepperton Studios tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? I've got some people that want to meet you. So the following morning, 9 o'clock, turn up at Shepperton, all bright-eyed, and I go and meet these people, and I've got the second unit director, the second unit stunt coordinator, the main unit stunt coordinator, Greg Powell, who is one of the biggest stunt coordinators in the world. I've got the production manager, all there wanting to meet me. And it was just great to suddenly have this introduction to these people. I was chatting away with them for about 15 minutes about what I do. And then the production manager took me to one side, took me in an office and just showed me a load of dates. And said, right, this is when you'll be starting. And we're going to start off with this, this and this, some testing. And then need you to go to Tenerife for 3 months to shoot a massive tank chase sequence out there. And this was a big thing. And I was trying to act quite cool, and that this was a normal everyday occurrence for me. But inside I'm thinking to myself, this is it, this is as big as it gets. I remember going outside, sitting in the car afterwards, and then just crying my eyes out in the car, because it was like, I've just left the brigade, I've got no job. It was just such a big emotional point in my life. So we were doing all the usual car chase sequences on Fast and Furious. We were doing lots of crashes and jumps, and we were in Scotland and Liverpool, we were in London, we were doing a lot of testing at various airfields. But the main bit of it was this 3-month Tenerife chase involving the tank. And we had our vehicles shipped out to Tenerife. We built for it a matte black 4x4, so it would blend in the background of shot. The set, normally, if we're standing by on a set, I'll have like a fire engine and an ambulance at the side of the set. This, on Fast and Furious, the set was, you know, kilometres and kilometres long. We're a moving set along a closed-off motorway. So I had to have my team of firemen and paramedics with me as we're moving on this moving set. So we'd have the stunt coordinator and all the stunt team are doing their thing. Behind that, you've then got tracking vehicles moving along. And then behind the tracking vehicles trundling along, we've then got our safety vehicles following along behind that in amongst what we call ND cars. So ND cars are nondescript cars, they're just cars in the background. They'll always be driven by stunt performers just in case anything goes wrong, because they've got the understanding how to steer and crash and move out the way. And we would be behind them, and then we'd do the big action sequence. They'd call cut, the cars all come to a crash and come to a stop, and then all the ND cars move across to one side, and then the safety vehicle comes up along the side and comes to that crash scene and just works alongside the stunt coordinator, the special effects engineers, your camera crew, in just running that scene. It's pretty safe how it's all done on the feature films. You know, these stunt coordinators are the best in the world at what they do. That's why they're doing these massive Hollywood features. But we have to treat every single stunt as, has it potentially gone wrong? Is there an injured stunt performer? Has a vehicle crashed the wrong way? And deal with it. So we get to scene and we just spend a pretty adrenaline-fueled 2 minutes dealing with that emergency scene. On one of the Fast and Furious stunts, the car caught fire and it was scrapped and put in the scrapyard. We had a base, I think it was like 200 cars in the end, and we crashed. But in the bottom of it all was this molten, burnt mess, and I ripped all this mess apart, and it actually turned out it was a fake Vin Diesel doll with a Vin Diesel head. And I kind of like took all the molten mess. This was all that was left of it, really. But yeah, I had to kind of like take the Vin head around with me. After we finished on Fast and Furious, we kind of wanted to get back into the motorsport side of things again, and we were doing all the Drift All Stars events, we were doing the VMAX Top Speed events, which were great to be strategically involved in how those events run. Then this opportunity came along, and it was great. It was back to the motorsport again, and it was looking after the overall health and safety on the Monster Energy Speedway Grand Prix and the Rallycross Championship, which now became the World Rallycross Championship. So it was, I'd have one weekend I'd be in Poland in a massive stadium with 30,000 Polish speedway fans. And then I'd fly back on the Monday morning. The next thing I know, on the Thursday, I'm then flying out to Finland for a round of the World Rallycross Championship to look after the overall safety on that. So yeah, it was kind of like back to basics for me, but on a bigger scale. I'm quite lucky that some days I can be being a safety advisor on a big Hollywood movie, chatting to, you know, American producers. The next day I'll be out doing crowd first aid cover at a village fete where a little boy's had his finger stung by a wasp and I'm putting some hair cream on it. I love the fact that I can be up here 1 minute and then back to the basics of where I started off again. And I just think it's great to be involved in so many huge things, but also the smaller things as well. The company had grown quite a bit. We just won a contract to supply the BBC S03 studios with a paramedic every day for EastEnders and Holby City at the Studio Med Centre, and that was great. And then this other amazing opportunity came along, and it was the role of the overall production safety supervisor for Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation. This was a chance for me to really up my game and be, you know, the lead safety supervisor for the whole production. So yeah, I took it on, and it was great. Working with Tom Cruise, it was just a big learning point. The guy is absolutely amazing. The way his mind thinks, his attention to detail is just so up there. He produces, he wants to be involved in everything. He wants every single person on that production to be putting that effort in. So I remember we were in the mountains of Morocco. We had a big motorbike chase, and the BMW M3 is all as part of the chase. And I remember we were in this sort of like this big meeting before we started off one of the big action sequences. And he just looked at me and said, okay, I come off the motorbike now, and I go off the side of this cliff, what happens? And I said, well, thank you, Tom, I'm glad you've asked me that. So out of my pocket, I pull this emergency action plan with the hospital addresses where I've got an emergency helicopter on standby, I've got a paramedic in this vehicle following. I just reeled off this plan that I'd had, because I knew I was going to get that question at some time. And halfway through, he just goes, okay, stop, thank you. And that was, for me, it was like, you know, I've kind of hopefully passed his test. But yeah, working with someone like that, you know, the guy's maverick. It doesn't get much bigger. It's always a very surreal life sometimes, but it's enjoyable, it's great. A lot of the cool stuff we do all over the world, we've got all this emergency life-saving drugs and paramedic kit and health and safety kit, but the main thing I take everywhere with me is I take this Pelly case, and the most important thing that we can use on set, this is my mobile coffee making kit. So always have a whole bottle of water in there, a couple of burners, tea and coffee, and it's my kind of, I can have a coffee no matter where I am, I can make my own. So that's kind of that's to go everywhere with me. I was cracking out some mental hours back then. The time and effort I was putting into things, some of the days were just, you know, I could be in the office for 18, 20 hours working on things and getting all my team out working, and it was always very surreal with how what we were doing was, you know, was just so much, but I wasn't taking, I was putting all the money back into the company time and time again. Money didn't motivate me, but doing a good job did. But it created this ability for me to suddenly go back to my passion again, which was cars. And as a child, you know, you have your picture up on your bedroom wall. For me, Ferrari had always been this thing, this passion that if you like cars, you buy a Ferrari. You want to show off, you buy a Lambo. But if you're a true car nut who loves cars, it's Ferrari. And it happened. I went and bought one. I went and bought a Ferrari F430. So this was as I say, the pinnacle of what I wanted. This was the dream for all those years, and it finally happened. Ferrari F430, fairly standard car apart from the wheels. It's a dream come true. I left school, I didn't even do my last week at school. I left and joined the army. All I had was my passion and my quest to push things. And through doing that, it enabled me to set up a company, employ a lot of people, keep them happy, but also I bought a Ferrari. It was weird, and then I drove it home and parked it outside my 3-bedroom end terrace. as a company, I could push it, we could branch out and do other sorts of things, but that doesn't excite me. What excites me is the bespoke stuff that we do, and that's what I like doing. I just want to stay as this go-to person for something a bit one-off, involving cars, filming, motorsport, something a bit different that can get my mind and my team's minds working. That's what excites me, and that's where I want to stay. We've had the opportunity to do some amazing things. We've visited 56 countries now. Simple things like we drove the entire eastern coastline of Madagascar from the bottom to the top through the jungle for BBC World's Most Dangerous Roads. You know, that's just an amazing adventure. We've been very lucky, and it kind of makes me think, would I change anything from what we've done the last 10 years? From what we do, I don't think I'd change anything, because what we do is very dynamic and happens at the time. So from that side of it, there's nothing I would change, I don't think. From a business point of view, there's so many things I would change, mainly because business isn't what I do. It's not what the plan was to do this sort of thing. I've learned so many lessons in business over the last 10 years. Somebody once said to me, when things go wrong, that's when you learn. When things go right, you don't learn anything. You wouldn't change anything because it's gone right. And I think that's a big thing for me, but it's just very lucky that I've had some people put a massive amount of trust in my team and myself, a huge amount of trust, and that's what I appreciate hugely. And the guys that work for me have all put a lot of effort in as well and got us to this position where we get to do very, very cool stuff. We enjoy doing it and we get paid to do it as well.